Pack your desk, Lily. You're fired. My sister Victoria stood in the doorway of my cramped office, arms crossed, wearing a power suit that cost more than my monthly salary. Behind her, our parents beamed with pride at their golden child finally taking charge. What none of them knew was that I'd been waiting 3 years for exactly this moment. The conference room at Morrison Tech Solutions was packed. 23 employees, the 5-member board of directors, and my entire family gathered for what Victoria called her New Era announcement. I sat in the back corner, my cardboard box of personal items on my lap, watching my sister bask in the attention. As your new CEO, Victoria announced, clicking to her first PowerPoint slide, I'm implementing immediate changes, starting with eliminating dead weight. Her eyes found mine across the room. My sister Lily has been coasting in marketing for 5 years, producing nothing of value. Today is her last day. Mom actually started a slow clap. Dad joined in. Several board members who'd never liked me smiled with satisfaction. I stayed quiet, holding my box, letting the humiliation wash over me like I had so many times before. Lily never had the vision for this company, Victoria continued. Our father built Morrison Tech from nothing, and when he retired 2 years ago, he wisely chose me to lead it forward. Some people are meant to lead. Others are meant to follow. Lily, you couldn't even follow properly. The room laughed. I'd heard worse from Victoria over the years. She was 33, 3 years older than me, and had spent our entire lives making sure everyone knew she was the smart one, the capable one, the daughter worth investing in. What they didn't know was that when Dad retired 2 years ago, he'd been 6 months from bankruptcy. Morrison Tech was bleeding money, losing clients, drowning in debt from Dad's terrible decisions. Victoria had refused to join the company back then, too busy climbing the corporate ladder at a Fortune 500 firm to care about the family business. But I cared. I'd always cared. Before Lily leaves, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, does anyone want to say anything? Thank her for her minimal contributions. Silence. Not one person spoke up. Not even Janet from accounting, who I'd helped train when she started. Not Marcus from sales, whose daughter's medical bills I'd quietly helped with last year. Not a single person. Nothing. Victoria smiled. Well then, Lily, I think that says everything. Security will escort you out. I stood up slowly, adjusting my grip on the cardboard box. Actually, before I go, I have something to say. Victoria's smile tightened. Make it quick. We have real business to discuss. I'll make it very quick. I pulled out my phone, typed a quick message, and hit send. I just want to say congratulations, Victoria. You finally got what you always wanted. The CEO title, the corner office, everyone's admiration. Exactly. She looked at the board members. See, even Lily recognizes that some people are born to lead. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the response, then looked up at my sister. There's just one small thing you should know. What's that? She was already dismissing me, turning back to her presentation. When Dad was about to lose this company 2 years ago, someone bought out his shares. 67% of Morrison Tech. Dad got to keep 20%, and the remaining shares were distributed among early investors. The room went quiet. Victoria's hand froze on her laptop. What are you talking about? The anonymous buyer, I continued calmly. The one who injected $4.2 million in capital to save the company. The one who's been the majority shareholder for 2 years. That was me. Dad's face went white. Mom actually gasped. Victoria just stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. That's impossible, Victoria said. You're in marketing. You make $65,000 a year. Where would you get $4.2 million? I don't make $65,000 a year, I said quietly. That's what my paycheck from Morrison Tech says. But I've been running a digital marketing consultancy on the side for 8 years, Williamson Digital Strategies. We've got 43 clients, 18 employees, and we cleared $8.3 million in revenue last year. Morrison Tech was my largest single investment. The board chairman, Gregory Stone, was staring at his phone. He looked up at me, then at Victoria, then back at me. Ms. Williams, I just received your message. You're invoking your shareholder rights. I am. I set my cardboard box on the table. I'm calling an emergency board vote. As the holder of 67% of voting shares, I'm dissolving the current board structure and CEO appointment, effective immediately. Victoria's face went from confused to panicked. You can't do that. Actually, I can. It's in the shareholder agreement Dad signed when he sold me the shares. Any holder of more than 50% can call for immediate restructuring if they believe the company is being mismanaged. Mismanaged? Victoria's voice rose. I've been CEO for 3 months. The company is doing great. Is it? I pulled out a folder from my cardboard box. Because according to the financial reports I received quarterly as majority shareholder, you've lost 3 major clients in the last 90 days. Revenue is down 23%. Employee turnover has increased 40%. And you just fired your head of marketing, the person who landed 6 of your top 10 accounts, because she's your sister and you wanted to humiliate her. Gregory was reading something on his tablet. Ms. Williams is correct. The shareholder agreement gives her full authority to restructure leadership. I received the documentation 2 years ago when the shares were purchased, but the buyer insisted on anonymity. Victoria turned to our father. Did you know about this? Dad's hands were shaking. Lily, you saved the company. Someone had to, I said. You were going to lose everything. The house, the cars, Mom's medical bills from her surgery. I couldn't let that happen. Mom was crying now. Lily, we had no idea. You never asked. You never wondered how Dad suddenly had money to pay off his debts. You never questioned who the anonymous investor was. You just assumed it was someone from Dad's network, another rich businessman swooping in to save the day. Victoria was on her phone now, frantically typing. This is insane. You can't just take over the company. I'm not taking it over, I said. I've owned the controlling interest for 2 years. I've been letting Dad stay on as chairman emeritus, letting the board run operations, staying quiet in my marketing role because I believed in letting others lead. I looked directly at my sister. But you've shown me that you're not capable of leading. You're capable of destroying. Dad, one mistake, Victoria said desperately. Firing you was one mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. I opened the folder. I have documentation of every employee you've berated, every client you've alienated with your arrogance, every decision you've made that put your ego ahead of the company's success. Janet in accounting. You reduced her to tears last week because she asked a question about your expense reports. Marcus in sales. You threatened to fire him because he closed a deal his way instead of following your brilliant new strategy. You're not leading this company. You're terrorizing it. Gregory cleared his throat. Ms. Williams, what are your intentions? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been planning for 3 years, since the day I'd written that $4.2 million check and saved my family's legacy. I'm removing Victoria as CEO, effective immediately. I'm appointing myself as interim CEO while we conduct a proper search for qualified leadership. And I'm implementing new bylaws that prevent anyone from being fired without cause and documentation. You're seriously taking my job? Victoria's voice cracked. You took mine first, I said quietly. The difference is I actually earned mine. The vote was swift. As the majority shareholder, I didn't technically need board approval, but Gregory called for a formal vote anyway. 5 board members, 5 votes in favor of the restructuring. Victoria wasn't a board member yet, so she couldn't even vote against it. This is insane. Dad finally found his voice. Lily, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked. 2 years ago, when I offered to help save the company, you laughed. You said I was sweet for wanting to help, but business was for people like Victoria, people with MBAs from prestigious schools, not people like me with a state school marketing degree and small-time freelance work. I never said that, Dad protested weakly. You said exactly that, Christmas 2022. I'll never forget it. I looked around the room. I saved this company not because I wanted recognition. I saved it because I loved it, because I grew up watching Dad build it, and I couldn't stand to see it fail. But I'm done being invisible. I'm done letting people who've never built anything tell me I'm worthless. Victoria was gathering her things, tears streaming down her face. You're going to regret this, Lily. You're right. I don't have an MBA. I don't have years of Fortune 500 experience. I smiled. But I have something better. I have the respect of the employees you've been terrorizing. I have relationships with the clients you've been alienating, and I have the intelligence to know that leadership isn't about making yourself look good. It's about making everyone around you better. Mom approached me slowly. Lily, sweetie, why didn't you tell us about your company? I tried multiple times, but every time I mentioned Williamson Digital, you changed the subject. You were more interested in Victoria's corporate promotions and quarterly bonuses. My little consulting work didn't seem worth discussing. We're so sorry, Mom whispered. I know. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. But sorry doesn't change 3 decades of being the overlooked daughter, the one who wasn't quite smart enough, pretty enough, ambitious enough. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth your attention. And then I realized I didn't need to prove anything to you. I just needed to prove it to myself. The meeting adjourned. Victoria left without another word, our parents trailing behind her, trying to process what had just happened. The board members congratulated me awkwardly, unsure how to handle the family drama they just witnessed. Gregory stayed behind. Ms. Williams, I want to apologize. I've been on this board for 5 years, and I never once stood up for you when Victoria was attacking you. Why would you? I asked. You didn't know who I was. I should have stood up for you, because it was the right thing to do, he said firmly. Title and ownership aside, no one deserves to be treated the way you were treated today. I'm ashamed I didn't speak up. That meant more than he knew. Thank you, Gregory. What's your first move as CEO? I looked around the conference room at the company my father built, that I saved, that I just reclaimed. First, I'm giving myself a proper salary. Turns out CEOs make more than $65,000. Gregory laughed. Second, I'm sitting down with every single employee and asking what they need to do their jobs better. And third, I'm calling our 3 lost clients and winning them back. And what about your sister? I thought about Victoria, about the sister who'd spent our entire lives making sure I knew my place. She's talented. She's smart. She's just never learned that you can't lead through fear. If she figures that out someday, and if she apologizes to every person she hurt, maybe there's a place for her here. But not today. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus in sales. We heard what happened. The whole office is celebrating. Thank you for standing up to her, and congratulations, boss. I smiled. For the first time in my entire professional life, someone had called me boss and meant it. 3 months later, Morrison Tech's revenue was up 31%. We'd won back all 3 lost clients and landed 5 new ones. Employee turnover had dropped to nearly 0, and I'd been featured in Business Weekly magazine as the silent majority shareholder who saved her family's company. Victoria never apologized. She took a job at a competitor, and according to industry gossip, she was already making enemies with her management style. Mom and Dad visited my office regularly now, finally asking questions about my consulting business, about my investment strategy, about my plans for Morrison Tech's future. But the moment that mattered most came 6 months after I took over as CEO. I was working late in my new corner office when Janet from accounting knocked on my door. Miss Williams, do you have a minute? Always. And please, call me Lily. She sat down nervously. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for standing up to Victoria, for making this a place where people actually want to work again.
She paused.
And I wanted to apologize for not speaking up that day when she fired you. I should have said something. You were afraid, I said gently. I understand. Still, you helped me when my daughter was sick. You've always been kind. I should have been brave enough to return that kindness. You're being brave now, I pointed out. That counts. After she left, I stood at my window looking out over the city. The girl who'd been fired in front of her entire family, humiliated and dismissed, was gone. And her place was a woman who'd learned that real power wasn't about being the loudest person in the room. It was about being the smartest, the most strategic, the most prepared. My phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Lily. Her voice was small. I saw the Business Weekly article. Victoria, I said. I should have known. I should have seen what you were capable of. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Silence then. I'm sorry for everything. For firing you, for treating you like you didn't matter. For being a terrible sister. It wasn't enough. Years of cruelty couldn't be erased by one phone call. But it was a start. Thank you for saying that, I said. It means something. Do you think someday we could try again as sisters? I thought about the little girl who'd worshipped her big sister, who'd followed Victoria around like a shadow, desperate for her approval. That girl was gone, but maybe, somewhere in the future, two women who happened to be sisters could find a new relationship built on mutual respect instead of hierarchy. Maybe, I said, someday, when you've figured out how to treat people like they matter. I'm working on it, she said quietly. I promise I'm working on it. We hung up. I didn't know if Victoria would change. People usually didn't, but I'd learned that I couldn't control anyone's journey but my own. And my journey had led me here, to this office, to this company, to this life I'd built with my own hands. While everyone else was looking the other way, the overlooked daughter had become the majority shareholder. The dead weight had become the CEO. The failure had become the success story, and I'd done it all by being exactly who I was, even when no one else saw my worth. That was the real victory.